Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Nitin Jain, who is the co-founder of Off Business, a new age fintech startup, and is technologically driven to prove smart financing to SMEs. Nitin has attended IIT Delhi for BTech and MTech in computer science. Nitin had worked for Royal Bank of Scotland for 7 years before starting his own venture in 2015. Hi Nitin, welcome to Entrepreneur Lounge of India.
I thank you so much, Priyaranjan, for having me, and I'm very happy to share whatever learnings we have got along the journey with our young audience. Thank you so much for having me.
Nitin, I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Yeah, so I'm a IIT Delhi computer science graduate, graduated with a silver medal, went to London, worked on the trading desk for about 7 years, did credit and interest rate derivatives trading for the European markets. 2015, I realized I wanted to come back to India to set up my own entrepreneurial venture. And 2015, joined hands with four other people, all are from IIT Kharagpur and Madras. We essentially got together and we raised a decent amount of money with the vision of building the largest B2B SME aggregation and financing platform. So in 2015 is when I started, and there's been no looking back ever since.
Would like to hear something on what is Off Business about, what are the services it provides?
Sure. So Off Business, when we started, we wanted to become the B2B aggregation platform equivalent to what Amazon, Flipkart have done on the B2C side. So when we started off, we thought that we will get all the commodities online and we will start aggregating from all the SMEs that are there. So the SMEs that are procuring, let's say 10 tons of steel, and if we find 1,000 SMEs, so 10,000 tons of steel will obviously attract a better price. So we thought that some pricing benefit we will keep and some pricing benefit we will pass over to the SMEs as their benefit. 6 months down the line, we realized that this is a credit business, more of a credit business than an aggregation business, because credit is the hook. And most of the SMEs survive on credit from the market because they have very little assets of their own to securitize with the banks. So we became an NBFC and we became a lender plus plus. So when you say a lender, we essentially give working capital lines to NBFCs to procure raw material, and we layer other services on top as well, like aggregation services. So we aggregate all the bulk commodities that are there, like steel, aluminium, agricultural commodities, polymer, rubber, chemical, and so on and so forth. So what we've seen over a period of time is that both our lending services as well as the aggregation services are a huge value, they add a huge amount of value to the SMEs, and the SMEs are able to benefit both from the reduced interest rates that we offer, as well as the aggregation benefit in terms of pricing that we offer. So their cost of raw material comes down by around 40% odd, and that's a massive saving for them in terms of credit, in terms of the pricing, and so on and so forth, so to what he was paying from the market. Yeah, so that so the additional amount that he was paying in the market, we've managed to reduce it massively. So that's the benefit that we provide.
Interesting. Nitin, many of the things you mentioned are a bit technical. I think if you want to explain your business model to a layman, how do you,
so what
in a very simplistic term?
What generally happens is that if you buy any raw material on credit, right? So you would go to a trader or a distributor. When you go to a trader and you say that I want this material on 30 days credit, I will pay you after 30 or 60 days. The trader immediately sees this as an opportunity to make a lot of money. Why? Because he will add about 3% to 4% per month on top of the material cost, and essentially give it to you at, so as I said, he'll give it to you at 4%, 3 to 4% per month additional cost.
Okay.
Now, when we come into the picture, we give a platform to the SMEs that, hey, this is your working capital line that we have given to you. Now we will together go and negotiate with the suppliers and not ask for credit. We will pay them cash down.
Okay.
And take the material. And we will offer you credit at a very fixed rate, which is going to be much lower from the market. So when you go and buy in advance, what generally happens is that the pricing actually significantly comes down. So this is the benefit. So we are able to drive the pricing down of the raw material by purchasing in advance. And then we layer a transparent interest rate on top so that the SME knows exactly what he's paying for. He's not being cheated, or there is no opaqueness in the entire system.
Okay.
So I hope I managed to explain in a very layman terms. It's like if you go and purchase cigarettes, right? Many of our young audience may be cigarette smokers. If you go and purchase cigarettes from a panwadi, if you buy in advance versus tell him that I will pay in 30 days time, that's what some of our young guys do. The panwadi will obviously add about 1 rupee to the cigarette, which works out to be about 5%. And that's a massive cost. So why would you not pay in advance and take the cigarette?
I think that is a oversimplified perspective. So here comes my next question. How are you able to provide your services at a lower cost? Let's say banks are providing interest rate of 10%, and you mentioned you provide interest rate that is lower than the market standards. How are you able to do that?
So when we aggregate raw materials, we go and directly talk to the manufacturers or the end source where we procure the raw materials, right? So what happens is that there are about 3 or 4 layers of disintermediation that we do. There are distributors, there are super distributors, then there are stockists, there are traders. So when we actually disintermediate the entire chain, we end up going directly to the manufacturers, and the manufacturers obviously want volume. So when we aggregate those volumes and give it to the manufacturer is able to give it to us at a larger rate, at a lower rate. Now we also do not stock the raw material. So we save on insurance cost, we save on stocking cost. So that is why our overall cost actually comes down heavily. A trader needs to definitely stock. Without stocking, he will not be able to sustain his business, right? Otherwise, there will be no real value addition that the trader provides. So what we do is that we essentially disintermediate and we go directly to the end manufacturer like SAIL, Tata, JSPL, Vedanta, and so on and so forth. And we negotiate much better rates for the SMEs, because the SME purchasing 10 tons of steel will never be able to go to these large guys, because they will never entertain them, credit or no credit, right? So we essentially remove that barrier.
Understood. I think now I have a better sense of your business model. Right. My next question would be, Nitin, since you work with the SMEs so closely, since SMEs are not very different from the startups we see. The size of the SMEs and size of startups are more or less same. Also, the capital and many of the aspects are similar. What differentiates a SME from a startup? Why an SME cannot be called as a startup? Why a startup cannot be called as a SME?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? So SMEs essentially are traditional businesses where they are asset heavy. What do you mean by asset heavy? They have a piece of land where they build a factory, they have their own machinery, and essentially they start production with captive clients, and they aim to essentially do, let's say, a maximum of 10 crores or 20 crores per annum, and they want to grow by about 20% year on year. That's their aim and ambition, right? Because they want to sustain the livelihood of their families using whatever assets they have. Now, a startup thinks very differently, or at least the new age startups think very, very differently. A new age startup would essentially behave in a very asset light model, not have too many assets on their books. They would either lease, or they would essentially find out a way of scaling it up much faster. So hence they end up growing 100 or 200% year on year, as opposed to a traditional SME who would go 10 to 20% year on year. A startup basically wants to scale and solve a particular gap in the market. SME doesn't want to do that. SME wants to wants to take a certain process and incrementally better it and serve the MNCs, etc. They're not here to disrupt the market in any way. They are here to provide an additional service. But the startup tries to find a gap in the market, tries to identify where is the real lag, or where they can help plug in the gap and introduce a new innovative way of working, which has not been thought before. If you take the Ubers of the world or the Airbnbs of the world, now they had twofold aim, right? One, they wanted to plug a gap that they identified in the market, and second, they wanted to scale up very, very quickly. They wanted to use the power of technology as well. They wanted to use the power of the marketplace. They wanted to scale up very, very quickly. So these are the two reasons that a startup is very different from an SME. An SME doesn't think like that.
And since you very clearly mentioned what is the difference between SME and a startup, someone who builds an SME, he can be called as an entrepreneur. Also, somebody who builds a startup is, of course, an entrepreneur. What is the difference between these two people?
No, I think it's pretty much the same, right? Both of them have an ambition of growing their own companies to a very decent scale. Both of them are basically starting out from scratch, so it's not as if you've got some huge amount of experience. So if you're an entrepreneur in your own right, you essentially start with very little experience and you build it along the way, right? Every startup that you see, they do not have years on years of experience in that particular relevant field. They entered a new field and then tried to disrupt the same. So similarly, if you talk about an entrepreneur, generally an entrepreneur does not have years and years of relevant experience. They figure out a gap in the market. They do not come with a baggage. They do not come with preconceived notions. They find out a new area of growth and development, and they essentially then latch onto it and disrupt the market. So that's my definition of an entrepreneur. But if you say someone like someone who already has a textile mill running, and if he forms another unit which does almost the same thing, he cannot be really termed as a new age entrepreneur, or he cannot be termed as an early entrepreneur. He's already established his company. He's already running his company. Now, if I did not have any experience in terms of financing an NBFC, we all five of us and the entire OFP team of 500, we figured it out together. How do you set up processes for NBFCs? How do you identify good clients whom to lend to? How do you identify a gap in the market? How do you layer additional services on top so that you can be of value to the SMEs? So we identify the new age entrepreneurs, try and identify these new gaps in the market, right? So an SME entrepreneur is the same as a startup entrepreneur, with the exception that an SME entrepreneur would want to bootstrap and essentially use his own money to maybe grow his venture 20% year on year, whereas a new age entrepreneur would essentially more want to as well as also raise money from venture capitalists to essentially propel his ambitions so that he can grow much faster. Because if there's a gap in the market, because the world is becoming very efficient, that gap in the market will be fulfilled very quickly, right? If he doesn't do it, or if she doesn't do it, someone else will come and disrupt the market. So they need that additional capital and help from the VCs, and they need a guiding force as well, because the VCs have seen a lot of startups. They have seen a lot of companies growing, and so essentially they can help the entrepreneur of what to do, what not to do. So the new age entrepreneur would have two ways of starting his own company. One is either bootstrapping, or the other is bootstrapping, but at some stage also taking in venture capital. I'm a strong believer in venture capital, because I believe that gives you a decent amount of platform to really grow, and it helps you grow your network as well at the same time.
So Nitin, now we would get back to our regular course of questions. Would like to know, when did you think of building this venture? When this idea came to you?
So in 2015, we got together and we said that, listen, we want to do something in the B2B world. That time we had no idea what we were going to do. We said, let's get together, let's figure it out, let's hit the market, let's speak to a lot of suppliers, buyers, manufacturers. And I'm sure because we were all smart, we were all accomplished in our respective fields. We said that if there is passion and hunger to perform, coupled with hustle, I am sure we'll make magic happen. That's exactly what happened. So it wasn't as if we had preconceived ideas or notions. We just had a vision that, listen, we want to do something for the SME world. We want to do something in the B2B world. So that is when 2015, the thought hit that, listen, it's enough time has been spent in the corporate world. 7 years is a very decent amount of time. Now is the time to hit the field and start something of your own and really see how you can disrupt the market, because that's a real joy, right? Once you solve a real life problem that has not been solved before, that actually gives you the real joy. So 2015 is when we started. September was when we incorporated the company. August actually, but September is when we started the office.
And what was your first day into entrepreneurship like?
It was commotion, confusion, but excitement at the same time, right? So we did not know, right? On day one, we had no idea what we were going to do. We sat down, we said, let's hit the market. Let's spend 2 or 3 months finding out, speaking to a lot of guys, finding out what happens in the market, finding out what we can do, finding out the gaps in the market. So 2 or 3 months were a lot of confusion, a lot of commotion. Plus, I was coming from a background which was very quote unquote elitist in nature, right? So investment banking, you sit in AC offices, you're dressed in tie and suits. Suddenly coming to India from London was a very huge culture shock for me, because I'd never worked in India before. So to get used to the idea of India, where a lot of jugaad happens, a lot of things happen on an ad hoc basis. There is a complete madness around. There are a lot of inefficiencies. So that was fun as well, but took me about 3 or 4 months to actually figure out the concept of India and how I can adjust my working style and then make things happen. So that was the initial few months like.
Did you quit the job first, or did you think of an idea then quit the job?
No, I quit the job because there is no plan B. If you want to start your own venture, if you come with a plan B, then it's never going to succeed. That's my belief. I may be wrong, but that's my belief.
Interesting. So tell me, what is your motivation behind you quit a very well-paying and premium job, I would say, and get into uncertainties? Why? What happened?
Yeah, so there was always this feeling inside me that I'm not doing justice to who I am by being in an environment which is already set, right? So so you have horses blinkers on, and you are not allowed to innovate too much, right? You can innovate around your job a little bit, but not too much, right? So what I thought was that I wanted to do something more. I wanted to solve a real life problem from scratch. That was the main motivation. And then the second motivation was that I wanted to do it in a developing economy where there are a lot of inefficiencies. So I had started something in London and UK where it is more of the developed part, where there are less inefficiencies. So I would not have essentially had the same probability of success, or I would not have identified problems that easily, because in India, inefficiencies result in opportunities. That's what I feel. So we managed to figure out a market gap, and we managed to plug in the market gap. And now we essentially have innovated a brand new business model, as opposed to, just developing a product and then growing market share in that product. So it's a brand new business model that we have brought out in the market. So the main motivation was solving real life SME problems or real life problems. It just happened that we found the SME sector to be a very lucrative sector because of the problems prevalent in the SME sector.
Right. So I have a very interesting question for you. Let's say I want to make a movie out of your life, especially your journey into entrepreneurship and becoming successful in this. So how would the opening sequence of that movie be like?
I think that's a very Karan Johar type question. I think you should ask me more startup type questions, but I think it'll be sitting on a bullet train, sitting in front of a bullet train, not inside a bullet train,
In front of
right? Bullet train. That means it's going extremely fast. It's very hazy, and then you have to figure out stuff uh, on the way. So that's what the opening sequence will be like. You have to figure out stuff going at 300 kilometers per hour, and that's not an easy job. Yeah.
Okay. Now tell me, how did you find your initial team, starting from your co-founder? How did you, uh, uh, how did you?
So we have a big IIT network. So Ashish, Ruchi, Vasant, and Bhuvan, we essentially got connected through the network. All of us had the same vision and passion to perform. So we said that we are going to make things happen. We are basically going to make sure that we get together, have a common vision, and then we were good at our respective fields, right? So Ashish, for example, is very risk-minded in nature. So he has a very good control on risk. I am very sales oriented in nature, right? Vasant is again very salesy in nature and understands the South market pretty well. Bhuvan is very tech oriented, and Ruchi knows how to raise capital. So we had our own respective strengths, and then we took those strengths, we combined them, and essentially, as you say, it's like Power Rangers, right? So everyone has their own strengths, and then once you combine them together, you can certainly make magic happen. So that's what we did initially.
I'm very curious. You have 5 co-founders, you say, and for a startup or
Yeah.
for any company to, especially a startup to run smoothly, it is essential that all the co-founders are synchronized properly, have a common vision.
Yeah. So all of us, the good thing is that all of us have a very strong common vision. None of us have ever wavered away from that vision. And all of us have their own respective areas to look after. So we don't step on each other's toes at all. So I look after new initiatives and sales, especially in the north and the west. Vasant looks after sales in the south. Ashish looks after risk, and Bhuvan looks after the entire technology bit because he's a CTO. Ruchi is the CFO, so she looks after the finance aspect in terms of fundraising, in terms of maintaining controls and and essentially processes. So we all have our own strengths, and when you combine them together, because we complement each other, right? So I may not be very good at something, but the other person actually plugs in that gap. So that's what we do for each other.
And how do you sort out differences?
So differences are part and parcel, because if there are no differences, that means you're not doing something right. If there are differences, that means there are conflict of opinions. There are different opinions that you have, but that's a good thing, right? A problem need not have only one solution. So there are multiple. If there's only one opinion, that means there is no one to critique that particular opinion. But if there are difference of opinions, that means there are people who basically have counter opinions, who have different perspectives, and that really helps each other out. So we treat that as a positive, not a negative. That if there are difference of opinions, yes, there are difference of opinions, even amongst the OFBNs. We like to call our family OFBNs. So that's a good thing, I would say.
Nice. So I think we are very short of time now. Now I'll quickly rush through. I think I have only 3 questions left.
Sure.
First, I would like to ask, what is your vision with of business?
So we want to create the world's largest SME platform with financing at the core, and with other services like aggregation, tenders, aggregating laborers, workers, basically circled around it, right? So our core will remain financing always, and then we'll have all these layers on top, which will solve each and every pain point of the SME. SME has a pain point of working capital. SME has a pain point of getting cheaper raw materials. SME has a pain point of increasing capacity, and SME has a working capital of getting new technologies because the world is evolving very fast, and they have a issue of getting workers and laborers on time. So we're trying to solve each and every one of those pain points. And also they have an issue that they're not able to embrace technology that fast. They're not able to, they still file GST returns or their income tax returns in a very traditional way. So we are trying to disrupt all of that as well. And we are trying to bring technology into the forefront in doing that. So that's our vision.
What are the challenges you faced along the way while building this venture?
So there will be people like other traders and distributors who would be opposed to what you're doing, because essentially you're taking their market share and you're essentially disintermediating them. So we've had that issue in the past, but at the same time, we have brought about certain benefits to the traders and the distributors, where we've helped them churn their inventory much faster. So when we showed them the benefit, I think we got greater acceptance into the whole ecosystem. So initially we were sort of written off that you cannot disrupt an already existing market. You can try as much as you want, but there's a cloud. There are certain traders and distributors who've been established for 30, 40 years. They will never let you enter. But we did. We gave the SMEs, we work with the end clients to give them more innovative business models, which actually really helps them.
Right. Who's your role model or who inspires you when it comes to entrepreneurship?
I think all the guys who have really taken a problem and solved a real life problem and then taken it to scale, all of the people. I would not like to take a few names only, because there are a lot of people whom we look up to and we've seen grow in their respective fields. So all of those guys really inspire us, right? We essentially look up to those guys who have taken a certain problem and given their own flavor to it, and not really followed the common path. So we really like those particular people. To me, I think Airbnb was a fantastic story in terms of business model innovation. So I really look up to the founders of Airbnb. There is we are really inspired by the Bajaj story as well, Bajaj Finance, because I think the way they've handled a lot of crises has been really inspirational, especially the 2008 crisis. Right. So we were quite inspired by that as well. And so, yeah, so there are certain companies who give their own flavor to the problem that they're trying to solve, really inspire us.
I think Bajaj
and then don't really care about what other people have to say, and they essentially stick to their guns and stick to their convictions.
Right. How do you compare entrepreneurship with a 9-to-5 job? You have been to both sides of the stories.
I think my earlier job was not really 9 to 5. It was probably 7 to 8, because investment banking, the hours are, or merchant banking, the hours are very long. I think entrepreneurship is 24/7. So I essentially, after COVID times, what we're trying to do is, again, we are trying to innovate around a particular area. So we, again, are working 16, 17, 18 hours a day, non-stop. So yeah, so it's exciting. So it's something that really, so it's basically, if you follow your passion and you're really passionate about something, so then you don't even mind working for 20 hours a day, 18 hours a day. But if you treat it as a job, then even 4 hours, 5 hours is a struggle. So that's what I believed in. And hence, when I was not doing justice to what I thought I am capable of, so I was, I treated it as a job or a task, and I was not very passionate about it. But now I think, given that the passion and the hunger and hustle is there, so even working very, very long hours is not a problem.
Okay. We have almost come to an end of the interview. My last question: what is your final message to potential entrepreneurs or future founders or co-founders of this?
So there are 2 or 3 messages. So one is that assemble a great team. I think the team actually takes you forward, right? Because they are your support whenever you break down, and there will be a lot of times when you break down, they will be there to support you and then pull you up. Second, don't have a plan B if you really want to do entrepreneurship, right? So don't think that if this doesn't work out, I'll go back to my original job, previous job. Don't have a plan B. If you have a plan B, then that means you're hedging your bets. That means you're not doing justice to the problem that you're trying to solve, or justice to your ability and your capability. So, do everything that you're doing in your startup with full passion, rigor, and heart. So have your heart in the right place, and then remove a lot of distractions that come into play, right? Because entrepreneurship is a hard journey, but it's supremely rewarding at the end of it.
Right. Don't have a plan B. I think that is a very interesting message to our audience. On that note, I would like to end this session, Nitin. It was a pleasure to have you here at ELI. I think our audience would have got lifetime lessons from this video. Thanks for your time, Nitin, and our best
Thank
wishes
you.
for our business.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you, Priya, and all the best for your venture as well. Thank you so much.
Viewers, you can connect with Nitin on LinkedIn by searching for Nitin Jain. Also, do visit the Off Business website by typing offbusiness.com. So, whom do you want to have here at ELI for next episode? Do let me know in comments below. We will be back before you know it. Stay tuned to Entrepreneur Launch India.